James Parker had spent over a decade navigating the unforgiving northern seas. He had survived storms that could crush entire vessels, winds that tore through sails and decks, and waves taller than houses. Yet nothing had prepared him for the silence of that morning. The small boat cutting through the endless expanse of water seemed almost unreal, the only sound the low hum of the engine and the gentle slap of water against the hull. Mist hovered over the ocean like a veil, and the first rays of the sun painted the horizon in a pale orange, reflecting off the steel of the offshore platform looming ahead. As the boat drew closer, James could see the monolithic structure in its entirety. Cranes stretching into the sky, scaffolding connecting platforms like a metallic labyrinth, and the sheer scale of the rig impressing itself upon him. He had stepped on many platforms before, but the eerie stillness and the faint tilt of the surface immediately caught his attention. A pen, seemingly of its own accord, rolled slowly across the table in the control room, prompting him to pause. His instincts screamed something was off. His partner, David, younger but equally meticulous, stepped aboard with him. There was a calm determination in his movements, yet even he could not hide the slight tension as he surveyed this platform. "You feel that?" James asked quietly, nodding toward the rolling pen. David's eyes followed the movement, and he nodded slowly. The storm last night must have been worse than reported. They began their initial inspection methodically. Bolts were checked, gauges examined, and every visible support was scrutinized. Small anomalies appeared immediately, a slightly warped beam here, a loose bolt there. These minor imperfections, James knew, could signify deeper structural issues. The tilt of the platform, subtle yet unmistakable, increased his concern. This was not routine maintenance, this was survival. Every movement across the deck produced faint vibrations. James observed how a paper cup rolled across a table, barely noticeable but enough to suggest the platform was still settling after the storm. They documented everything, taking photographs and notes, knowing that even the smallest detail could prevent disaster in the future. The day progressed with meticulous inspections. Every bolt, joint, and cable was checked and double-checked. James reflected on previous storms, considering how a minor oversight could lead to structural failure. The tilt was slight, yet each shift of the metal resonated through the platform, a warning that the ocean's forces were still at work. By evening, the tilt had become more noticeable. James and David secured loose equipment and tightened connections. They made mental notes of areas that would require ongoing monitoring. The horizon glowed with the last light of the sun, but the calm was deceptive. The ocean beneath had a memory, and they knew it would test them again. Night brought with it subtle vibrations and a low, metallic groan. Anchored to reinforced beams, James and David maintained constant vigilance. Sleep was impossible, replaced by awareness and anticipation. Every creak and whisper of metal was amplified in the darkness, reminding them that survival was as much about attention as strength. A sudden tremor shook the platform, subtle but undeniable. They immediately checked all equipment, harnesses, and instruments. Attempts to contact headquarters yielded only static isolation, pressed in, leaving them dependent entirely on their own skill and preparedness. As the first light of dawn illuminated the deck, the tremors subsided. James and David, though exhausted, continued inspections. Minor adjustments were made, bolts tightened, and instruments recalibrated. They logged every observation, ensuring a detailed record for future reference. By the end of the day, the platform was more secure. James and David reflected on the importance of meticulous preparation, constant observation, and mutual trust. The ocean had tested them, and they had endured, but they knew more challenges lay ahead. The following morning began with the low hum of machinery and distant waves. James and David methodically walked the platform, checking each section, documenting the previous night's minor shifts. The tilt of the platform was still perceptible. Every slight roll of equipment or paper reminded them of the forces acting invisibly beneath their feet. While inspecting a support beam near the crane area, James noticed a small crack forming along a welded joint. Though minor, it signaled ongoing structural stress from the storm. David quickly measured and documented the crack, noting the tilt angle of the platform and the vibration patterns that could have contributed to it. Attempts to relay the structural findings to headquarters revealed intermittent radio failures. Static and drop signals heightened tension. They realized they might have to handle emergencies without immediate external help, relying entirely on their expertise and resourcefulness. James and David secured all loose equipment, anchoring tools and materials. They rechecked harness lines and stabilizers. Every action was precise and deliberate. A momentary lapse could lead to catastrophe. Small adjustments in weight distribution were made to counterbalance the tilt, each calculation informed by experience and intuition. By mid-morning, a subtle vibration ran through the deck, slightly stronger than before. The men froze, measuring the intensity. Even minor quivers in metal could indicate serious stress accumulation. Their strategy was to monitor, reinforce, and document every movement meticulously. Using specialized tools, they performed targeted repairs on the compromised welds and bolts. Each task required careful balance as the platform shifted slightly beneath them, sweat mixed with salt from the sea, a constant reminder of the harsh environment they were enduring. Looking out across the calm sea, James reflected on the ocean's unpredictable power. The water, seemingly peaceful, belied the violent forces beneath. Observing currents and subtle wave patterns gave them clues about the platform's responses and the stresses being applied. Hours of intense focus began to weigh on both men. Mental fatigue threatened to dull their vigilance. They took brief breaks, practicing breathing exercises and focusing on maintaining awareness, knowing that even small lapses could escalate into disaster. As afternoon sun beat down, they continued methodical inspections. Slight shifts in the tilt were noted, and minor adjustments were made to tension lines. Every screw, bolt, and support beam was examined for weakness, and contingency plans were discussed in case conditions worsened. By evening, James and David completed a comprehensive review of the platform's integrity. Loose equipment was secured, minor repairs documented, and logs updated. They prepared for another night of vigilance, aware that the ocean's temperament could change without warning, and their survival depended on unwavering attention. The day after the storm's retreat, the platform still bore the scars of the tempest. James and David moved with deliberate caution, inspecting every joint, every bolt, every beam. Even minor imperfections drew their attention. A hairline crack or a slightly warped panel could signify impending danger. The sun beat down on the steel, creating heat waves that shimmered across the deck. making small objects dance and further complicating the already delicate balance. As they moved across the deck, small incidents reminded them of the precariousness of their situation. Tools slipped from counters, water pooled in uneven areas, and a loose cable snapped under its own tension, sending a jolt across the metal frame. James and David responded immediately, securing the area and reinforcing supports where necessary. Every minute detail mattered. Failure to act could escalate minor issues into catastrophic ones. As evening approached, shadows from the towering cranes stretched across the deck, bending along the uneven surfaces and creating illusions of movement where none existed. The tilt of the platform had become more pronounced, and both men were hyper-aware of every vibration and groan. The wind picked up, whispering through the scaffolding, a subtle reminder that the ocean could reclaim its dominance at any moment. Darkness fell, bringing with it heightened tension. James and David took turns monitoring the deck, ensuring that equipment remained secure and that the platform's tilt did not worsen. Around 1 a.m., they felt faint but distinct tremors, signaling that the platform was still adjusting to the storm's aftermath. They checked the structural supports, noted every shift, and remained vigilant despite fatigue. At 2 a.m., a sudden groan of metal reverberated through the platform, stronger than any previous vibration. The tilt increased noticeably. James and David immediately secured themselves to reinforced beams, gripping tools and safety lines tightly. The radio crackled with static, offering no relief. Isolation pressed in, and the men realized that the next several hours could determine their survival. By 3 a.m., the ocean unleashed renewed fury. Wind whipped across the deck, rain lashed against their bodies, and waves struck with alarming force. The platform flexed and groaned under the assault. James and David moved with precision, adjusting equipment, reinforcing supports, and bracing against the violent tilt. Every action was a test of endurance, focus, and skill. As morning broke, the storm began to abate. The platform, though battered, had endured. James and David surveyed the damage. The tilt remained, a constant reminder of the storm's fury, yet their methodical efforts had prevented total disaster. The calm ocean mirrored the golden light of sunrise, but the memory of the previous hours lingered in every groan, every vibration, every heartbeat. Throughout the day, the men worked tirelessly to stabilize the platform. Every bolt was rechecked, structural supports reinforced, and instruments recalibrated. Even minor imperfections were corrected, and careful logs were maintained for future reference. Sleep was limited, meals quick, but purpose drove them onward. Each wave that struck the supports, each subtle tilt adjustment, was a test of their skill and focus. James and David used brief moments of calm to reflect on their experiences. They reviewed what had transpired during the storm, noting what actions had saved them and what vulnerabilities remained. James contemplated the ocean's indifferent power, realizing that survival depended not on luck, but on constant vigilance, respect, and deliberate action. David focused on practical improvements, ensuring that no oversight would threaten future safety. By evening, the platform was as stable as it could be without external repair. James and David sat quietly, reviewing the day's events, planning for the coming hours. Each recognized the fragility of their situation, the necessity of preparation, and the endurance required to survive at sea. The calm was deceptive. James and David knew from experience that the ocean's power could return without warning. They spent the next hours reinforcing vulnerable areas, ensuring all lines were secure and that safety measures were double-checked. Mental preparation was as important as physical preparation. They discussed potential scenarios, mapped out evacuation routes, and rehearsed emergency procedures. Late afternoon brought faint tremors that ran through the platform. Each vibration was catalogued meticulously. James examined the instrumentation, noting patterns that could indicate shifting stress points. David reinforced support beams in the areas that appeared most affected. Communication with headquarters remained limited, and the men realized they might have to confront a storm without external assistance. As night fell, they set up observation points on the platform. Anchored securely to reinforced beams, they remained alert. The wind picked up slightly, and the water around the platform shimmered in the dim light. Even in relative calm, the platform groaned under the residual stress of previous storms. Around midnight, tremors intensified subtly. James and David checked every bolt and tension line. A slight shift caused a small crate to roll across the deck, reinforcing their awareness that the platform was not fully stabilized. Exhaustion was setting in, but they remained disciplined and vigilant. Using portable instruments, they measured tilt angles, vibrations, and stress points. Minor adjustments were made to counterbalance uneven loads. Every calculation, every correction was critical. A small error could magnify under the platform's stress. Their experience allowed them to anticipate subtle changes in the structure before they became dangerous. The hours passed with intermittent vibrations and minor adjustments. Both men reflected on the delicate balance of human skill and natural force. The ocean, indifferent to human effort, tested them continuously, yet they endured through careful observation and methodical action. As daylight returned, James and David conducted another full sweep of the platform. Minor cracks were inspected, bolts retightened, and equipment double-checked. Their logs were detailed, noting every anomaly for future reference. Even small imperfections could prove catastrophic if ignored. The mental strain of constant vigilance began to weigh heavily. James felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, while David focused on practical tasks to keep his mind occupied. Both understood the necessity of balancing mental clarity with physical action. They prepared the platform for the arrival of relief crews, reinforcing critical points and creating detailed reports of structural stresses and recent tremors. Every action was documented to ensure continuity and safety for the next rotation of workers. By evening, the platform was temporarily stable, yet both men remained on high alert. Each vibration, each tilt, was logged and analyzed. The ocean's potential to unleash chaos remained ever present, and the men prepared for whatever challenges the next hours might bring. As night deepened, the wind began to whisper of returning fury. James and David monitored the horizon, noting the clouds gathering like dark smoke. The previous storm had left its mark, but the ocean had a memory of its own, and subtle shifts in pressure and wave patterns indicated another test was imminent. The men moved quickly but methodically, securing tools, checking bolts, and reinforcing support beams. Each line was tested, every harness double-checked. Their experience told them that the storm would test every precaution they could take, and any lapse could have catastrophic consequences. By midnight, The storm had arrived. Rain lashed against the deck, and waves slammed the platform with force. The tilt, previously measured in inches, now shifted more noticeably. James and David anchored themselves to reinforced points, bracing against the tremors that ran through the metal structure. Every groan and vibration reminded them that survival depended on vigilance and precise action. Hours of tension and sleep deprivation weighed heavily. The men moved in practiced rhythm, each action deliberate. They monitored structural integrity, adjusted tension lines, and reinforced vulnerable points. The platform responded with subtle groans and shifts, but their meticulous actions mitigated further damage. As dawn broke, the storm began to wane. The platform remained battered but standing. Exhausted, James and David surveyed the deck. Minor debris and displaced tools marked the chaos of the night, but their methodical preparation had ensured survival. The ocean calmed, reflecting the pale light of morning, yet the memory of the storm lingered, etched into every beam and bolt. Throughout the morning, they focused on repairs and stabilization. Bolts were tightened, beams reinforced, and instruments recalibrated. They logged every tilt, vibration, and structural anomaly. Even minor adjustments were carefully noted. Each correction contributed to the overall safety of the platform, ensuring it could withstand future storms. James reflected on the storm's lessons. Survival required awareness, resilience, and respect for the ocean's power. David considered practical improvements, ensuring that no vulnerability remained. Their shared experiences strengthened their bond and reinforced the importance of methodical, deliberate action in life-threatening circumstances. By evening, the platform was stabilized as much as possible without external assistance. James and David prepared for the coming night, ensuring harnesses, lines, and instruments were in place. They rested briefly, conserving energy while maintaining vigilance. The tilt persisted subtly, a reminder of the storm's impact and the constant challenge posed by the sea. As night fell, they reflected on the precarious nature of their environment. Each vibration, each shift and tilt was a reminder of their fragility and the ocean's relentless force. Yet, through preparation, vigilance, and mutual support, they had endured. The platform, though scarred and leaning, remained a symbol of human resilience against the indifferent power of nature. Anchored and alert, James and David maintained their night watch. Every sound, the groan of metal, the distant crash of waves, the whispering wind, was a signal to remain vigilant. They had survived 2 storms, endured tilts and vibrations, and remained alive through meticulous observation, careful action, and mental fortitude. The ocean had tested them, and they had withstood its fury. As darkness fell, James and David prepared for the night with heightened awareness. The platform, though scarred from previous storms, still carried the subtle tilt that reminded them of the ocean's power. Every bolt, beam, and line had been checked and reinforced, yet the unpredictability of the sea loomed large. The night sky stretched above them, stars reflected faintly in the calm waters. Beneath the serene surface, currents shifted silently, carrying the latent energy of the ocean. Anchored securely to reinforced beams, they kept watch, scanning the horizon for the first signs of any disturbance. Around midnight, small tremors coursed through the platform. James and David responded immediately, checking instruments and tilt indicators. Every subtle vibration reminded them of the structure's fragility. Radio attempts to contact headquarters failed, leaving them solely reliant on their own vigilance and expertise. The ocean's temperament shifted as wind picked up and waves pounded the platform. The tilt grew incrementally with each strike. Anchored and braced, James and David moved with deliberate precision. Each action was calculated, every adjustment a lifeline to preserve stability against the raging forces. Exhaustion pressed upon them, but their focus never wavered. They reinforced beams, monitored instruments, and adjusted tension lines. Every tilt and vibration was a signal to act. Their experience, coordination, and mental fortitude allowed them to endure the relentless assault of the storm. By morning, the storm subsided. The platform, battered yet standing, bore the marks of the struggle. James and David, weary but resolute, assessed the damaged debris and displaced tools scattered the deck, yet their careful preparation had prevented catastrophe. The calm sea reflected the pale sunlight, a stark contrast to the chaos endured overnight. During the day, they concentrated on repair and stabilization. Bolts were rechecked, beams reinforced, and instruments recalibrated. Every anomaly was logged, creating a comprehensive record. Their shared experience reinforced the necessity of vigilance, preparation, and meticulous action for survival at sea. James pondered the ocean's indifferent power, understanding that survival depended on awareness, respect, and endurance. David implemented practical improvements, ensuring safety for future crews. Together, their experience became a testament to human resilience and the delicate balance between man and the relentless sea. Relief crews arrived, signaling the end of their rotation. The platform remained tilted, a subtle but enduring reminder of the storms they had faced. Exhausted yet fulfilled, James and David shared their observations and logs to ensure the safety of those who would follow. Walking away from the platform, both men reflected on the ordeal. The ocean had tested them physically, mentally, and emotionally. Through skill, preparation, and mutual support, they had endured. The platform, scarred but intact, stood as a monument to resilience and the human spirit, a reminder of the respect and vigilance required to survive the indifferent might of the sea.